Hello, welcome to this week's Forex Outlook here at xm.com. My name is Rafi Boyajian, currency analyst, and here with me is our chief economist, Michalis Florentiadis. Michalis, we saw a significant rebound in risk appetite this week, mainly on renewed hopes that the US and China could be headed for a significant trade deal. Despite that, though, we saw some weakness in the euro and pound, so that kept the dollar relatively strong. So what were the main drivers this week?
That's right, Rafi. I feel that this week was more about the dollar remaining king of the hill, sort of to speak, because even though we have diminishing expectations about the Fed's rate hikes next year, it seems that the other currencies might be facing a little bigger problems than what the US is the mild slowdown that the US could be facing and the inflation slowdown. Particularly, I think with sterling, we had the important vote on May's Brexit deal being delayed. Then we had that leadership challenge, which May, of course, won. But it's tough to say that that there has been any dramatic development on that front, because we are nowhere closer to a deal that is going to be accepted by the British Parliament. So uncertainty is certainly plaguing sterling. Whereas for the euro, we had the ECB meeting. We did have, I would say, a dovish tilt, although the Draghi was at pains not to sound particularly dovish, but the risks were also tilted to the downside, according to the ECB speakers. We also had the release of PMI figures, and we saw that the demonstrations in France are certainly having an economic impact and a severe slowdown there. So I think that the euro still has problem, although we could say that there has been some progress concerning the Italian budget. I think the euro's plate is pretty full of problems and issues concerning a slowdown, inflation slowdown, etc. So with all this in mind, the dollar doing well. And also I would note that the commodity currencies are a little troubled because of some bad data out of China, and the prospect of a slowdown there is not boding well for commodities and, of course, commodity currencies. So I would say this is broadly the environment in which we find ourselves. So what should we be looking at next week? I think the Fed meeting looms pretty large. What else?
That's right, we've got the FOMC meeting next Wednesday, and although we are likely to get a rate hike, what's going to be more important is what the Fed is going to be signaling for 2019. So there's there's a range of scenarios being predicted. Some saying the Fed will raise rates by 4 times next year, others saying just 1 time. At the moment, markets are barely pricing in 1 rate hike in 2019. So there's a possibility for surprises, and that could potentially lead to some volatility for the US dollar. We're also going to have it's also going to be a press conference at that meeting. So Jerome Powell will be speaking. He's also going to be speaking a couple of days later when he's going to be testifying before Congress. Plus, we're going to have the PC inflation figures coming up next week as well. So it's going to be pretty important for the greenback. We're going to have more central bank meetings. The Bank of England and the Bank of Japan are both due to hold their policy meetings next Thursday. We're not expecting any changes from either of those central banks, though the Bank of England could possibly sound a little bit more cautious given the heightened Brexit uncertainty. That could possibly weigh on sterling. We're also going to have out of the UK inflation and retail sales figures as well. And in Japan, we're also going to see inflation numbers too, and also in Canada as well. And in New Zealand, we're going to have the third quarter GDP estimates coming up.
So I think it's pretty safe to say that the Fed meeting, together with the other central bank meetings that you talked about, are sort of a way to wind down the year, probably the last major events before many countries get into end of year. A lot of countries are also celebrating Christmas. So maybe it's traditionally a period where things are a little bit slower in markets, and we'll see whether that is the case this year as well. Thank you very much for your input, Ravi. Thank you everyone for watching and have a great day.